I'm so happy and honored to be talking today with Michael Mondavi, who is the chairman and founder of Folio Fine Wine Partners, and an old friend of, I don't know, 40 years or so. And Michael, I also want to personally thank you for being a supporter of Come Over October. It is October, and here we are talking and doing what we love to do, which is tasting wine and sharing it. I'm going to taste some of
Oh,
your wine here.
yummy.
Beautiful. This is your red wine with this
Yeah.
beautiful label of vine roots. We'll talk about that wine in a minute, but to start out, let me get your perspective because you have a very long perspective on the California wine industry, on the American wine culture. You've been in the business essentially since you've been a teenager, maybe before you got even roped in as a kid. Um, how has the wine industry changed, and what has it taught you in all those years?
It's been big changes, but it's kind of gone up to from the early immigrant families, whether they be French or Italian, who would have wine on the table with their evening meals almost every night. It was not a luxury, it was the staple of the table, it was the liquid food to complement the meal. And so I learned that with my grandparents and parents. And then as we went into the 70s, early 80s, wine got to be more, quote, stylish, and people had to have a certain wine glass for certain wine. And the sommelier said, oh, no, you can't have this with what you're serving. You have to have something else. People looked at the prestige of wine rather than the joy of wine. I think we've come not full circle, but we've come to the point where a much broader population enjoys wine because it tastes good.
Mhm.
They enjoy wine because it's healthy and good for us in moderation. And it helps bring friends together. How often do you see someone bringing a cheesecake to a friend's house when they're invited to dinner? How often do you see them bring, you know, 4 T-bone steaks? Unless it's potluck, you don't do that. But it's normal to bring a
Bottle.
nice bottle of wine to your host. And
Mhm.
so wine has become more and more of the culture of America, and particularly the younger people who are moving fast and doing a lot of texting instead of talking. I think wine gives them an opportunity to slow down, have a conversation with one another, and just enjoy people.
Yeah, I know we sometimes say around Come Over October that wine has been making friends for 8,000 years, but it's true that it has this magical ability to connect people, and I think joy is the right word for it. But is all of I mean, there are fancy wines, right? And there are times for really elegant, expensive, world-renowned wines. And then there are get the party started kind of
Yeah.
wines. And wouldn't you say there's room for both of them, though?
Absolutely. In fact, I have a wonderful wine cellar that I've collected for decades, and many great wines from Europe, many great wines from California, Napa. And most of the time, I drink what you'd refer to as just a nice red wine or a nice white wine.
Mm.
Um, you don't have a fancy 4 course dinner every night. You, we eat plainly most of the time. Hopefully, we eat healthy. And if you want to eat even more healthy, enjoy it with a glass or two of wine.
Yeah. It's so true. Let's talk about Europe for a minute because as part of Folio, when you founded Folio, you have, incredible personal connections with so many wonderful wine families in Europe, and whose wines you have imported into the United States. Is there something that we can still learn from the Europeans, where wine is, it's so thoroughly threaded into the culture of Europe?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, wine gained interest after World War II in the United States when the servicemen who and men and women who served in Europe came home, and while on service in Europe, they learned that,
Mm.
oh, the French, the Italian, the Spanish, they enjoy a glass or two of wine with their meals, and it's really nice. And so I think what we've learned is that, again, moderation in all things, but we produce a product called wine that makes people happy.
What a concept.
Yeah, how many other products or businesses sell something that make people happy?
Yeah. It's as a writer, it's I have a unusual process for thinking up ideas to write about. And a thought will come into my mind. I'll just start collecting a folder. And one of the thoughts recently and I now have a folder on this. I haven't written the piece yet, but it's called The Decline of Pleasure.
Ah,
And maybe we don't talk about in the wine industry enough joy and pleasure and how central that is to human existence in a way, right? It's critically important.
yes. If people are happy and if they enjoy pleasure, whether it's food, wine, athletics, whatever, they're going to be actually a happier human being and much more pleasurable to be with.
Yes. So some psychologists may be out of business, but that's okay
That's
because
it.
people
Get
will
rid
be
of it,
happier.
buy some wine.
Yeah. What do you think the importance of stories is in the wine industry? Because a lot has been um, written and talked about recently about how maybe what's so compelling about wine are the stories of the people behind it. Do we tell those stories enough?
That's a very good point. I don't think we tell those stories enough. People are interested in people.
Mm.
They're not just interested in a product. And wine is total people, from the planting of the vineyards to the tilling of the soil to the harvest to the winemaking to then enjoying it with family and friends over a meal. And so I think we need to tell the story of the people in the vineyards, of
Mm.
winemakers, of if the owner is not a winemaker, why did that owner get interested and become a winemaker or a winery owner? And all of these stories are interesting and compelling. And I find that when I close my mouth and use my eyes and ears, I'm learning something. And usually you learn more breaking bread, enjoying a meal with a glass of wine and friends.
You know, about a month or so ago, I was talking to the great Italian chef Lydia Bastianich
Oh,
and cookbook author.
she's
And
wonderful.
she is wonderful. And she said something that struck me as quite profound. She said, "Why do you think so many business deals are done over food and wine? And often in restaurants, but even if not in a restaurant,
Mhm.
around a table." And she said, That's not by coincidence. Wine and food open you up, they make you receptive to ideas. And it's she said, I think if you go back in history, you know, 80% of all the great business deals ever have been made over food and wine. You must feel that way.
I agree. I think she is absolutely correct. And as you were talking, it reminded me, President Nixon on his trip to China took Schramsberg champagne and some other California wines to share with the Chinese as a gesture of friendship and I want to work with you.
Right.
And I think wine has a magical quality in that area.
You know, I'm glad you used the word magical because I'm wondering if after 50, 60 years in the wine business, it is still for you personally. Is it still a bit of a mystery?
Well, it is a mystery. I've yet to taste the perfect wine,
Mm.
regardless of who made it. I've tasted wonderful wines and I've tasted some that I didn't want to taste again. But it's fun because we're dealing with Mother Nature. And what really excites me now is that we are back to the future in our farming and winemaking. And by
Mhm.
that, I mean natural, organic farming and winemaking. And now regenerative farming. I remember when I was probably 13 or 14, my grandfather had me shoveling and turning over a compost pile because
Mm.
that was the fertilizer for the vineyards. They would get the old skins and seeds from the harvest and let it cook, and you'd have to shovel it and till it. And my grandfather and his generation were all natural farmers.
Yeah.
And with the universities and all these new herbicides, pesticides, fungicides, the industry became more chemical farming. And it's really wonderful. In the last 20, 25 years, we've gone back to the future, to wonderful, natural, organic farming. And the wines taste better.
Hmm.
I learned something from my uncle, and that is you should taste everything that you put in the vineyard or spray on the vines.
Mm.
And most of it tastes terrible.
Well, also you wouldn't want to, that would stop you right there from putting bad chemicals into the
Yeah,
vineyard. If it's not something that you would put in your own mouth, in a
yeah.
sense, right? You wouldn't put
If,
it on a vineyard.
if it's not healthy and good for you as a human, it's not going to be healthy and good for the field or for the crop that it's grown in.
Let me ask you why you think on this topic of nature, because like you, I mean, I moved here from here being Napa Valley from New York in order to be closer to vineyards. Just through osmosis, I felt like that would be good. And I've always thought of wine as something, it's like a straight shot of taking nature into your
Mm-hmm.
body. Um, and yet, I, when I hear sometimes younger consumers say that they feel that wine is not authentic or that they're searching for authenticity, I think to myself, what could be more authentic than that, right? Wine's connection to nature.
Yeah,
How about that idea?
if we were under the FDA, Food and Drug Administration, rather than the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, our label would say wine made from grapes.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't have any of these multi-syllable words that are on all the food packages. Wine is the most natural and healthful of all beverages. Louis Pasteur said that exact thing. He said, wine is the most natural and healthful of all beverages. Enjoy it in moderation.
Hmm.
And what he said then is so true today.
One of the great moments in the history of wine was Pasteur's discovery that yeasts consume sugar and turn them to alcohol. Yes,
Yeah.
he was quite the scientist. Um, So, are you ultimately optimistic about the wine industry now? I mean, you not only have Folio, but of course the Michael Mondavi family
Yeah.
wines, which I think your son makes, right?
Yes, and you know what's neat?
Rob makes.
He's doing a better job making that wine than I did. And it's always wonderful to see the student surpass the teacher.
Well, I'm sure he's happy to hear that.
Don't
But
tell, don't tell him. It's a secret.
so, because you are of an important wine family, and your wine family continues with Rob, um, and your daughter Dina. So, are you essentially optimistic, even the headwinds that the industry faces now are
Well,
well known?
well, anytime there's overplanting of vineyards, regardless of the region, it does catch up and it causes a surplus. This is, in my lifetime, the fourth cycle. This is
Mhm.
nothing new. California Cooler in 1976, I think it was created because of the surplus of wines. Wineries couldn't sell it. The fellows who started California Cooler bought the wine very inexpensively, made it taste a little like soda pop, and everybody said, oh my God, that's going to ruin the wine industry. It did the opposite. People who tried California Cooler and then Bartles and James a couple of years later said, I wonder what Chardonnay tastes like. I wonder what Cabernet tastes like. And they created the younger generation of wine drinkers in that era. And I think the same thing is going to happen. We're going through a cycle now. There are all these spritzers and seltzers and all. The young people are drinking a lot of those. They're going high on caffeine so that when they're doing all their games or whatever they're going to grow up in a couple of years. Someone's going to offer them a glass of red or white wine and they're going to go, oh my goodness, that tastes good. And it really is enjoyable to sit and relax and have this wine with you at a meal.
Mm,
And
yeah.
so I am the eternal optimist. And we had too many people come in and start wineries. We had too many people plant vineyards where they shouldn't be planted. And those are the ones that are going to evaporate. And the wines that are quality and taste good and have a reasonable value for the consumer will excel.
Yeah. I'm glad to hear you think so. I'm essentially optimistic as well. Um, but it is a trying time. I do think, though, that one of the things that propels the wine industry forward is the sheer maniacal love of those of us who are in the industry, and that creates a kind of giant energy halo.
Mhm.
And people think, wow, all right, give me a taste of that, right? I mean, someone turned us all on to some great wine at somewhere along the line, and we got on that train, and I think that process, which has happened for thousands of years,
Mhm.
will hopefully continue to happen.
Yeah.
but
Well,
but
again,
that
I agree with you. And again, as Louis Pasteur said, wine is the natural tranquilizer. Enjoy
mm,
it in moderation.
Yes, indeed. Do you remember the first wine that you like really fell in love with? Because I'm sure growing up in an Italian
Mm.
family, as you were saying, wine always on the table, but often it was very simple wine.
Yes.
It was every Tuesday, a kind of Tuesday night wine, what we
Yeah.
call. Um, so do you remember the first wine where you thought, oh my God, wine can be really unbelievable?
Well, I was home from college. Uh, my folks were living still at the Charles Krug Winery, their home there. And Alexis Lachine was visiting from France. And he brought a bottle of his Chateau Lescombes. My father served a bottle of the Charles Krug Cabernet Sauvignon, and the two of them were very nice, but that Chateau Lascombes just blew me away. It was spectacular. I said, Dad, we got to make it taste like this.
Yes, nothing like Great Bordeaux.
Oh,
Yeah,
there's
I hear
probably
you.
going to be a contract out for me in Napa later today.
Where does your love of wine come from? I mean, I'm wondering if you did you just, you got Italians are good at this. They rope their children into the family business, and before you know it, you're just in.
I think
Or yeah, tell
yeah,
me.
two things. Number one, my home from the time I was born through college was at the Charles Krug Ranch, 50 yards from the winery. From the time I was about 4 years old, my babysitter was the cellar master. My jungle gym was the winery. My mother would say, don't just go in the wine business, do whatever you want. And the more she said, don't go in the wine business, I wanted to get in the wine business. And it was just a love from the agriculture and the open fields and the vineyards to tasting that grape and saying, yes, it's ready to harvest today. Let's pick these grapes and watch them go through the fermentation cycle and then into the barrel and the aging and watch them progress. It's like watching a young child go through college
Mm.
in 2 years with the Cabernets, in 1 year with the white wines. And it's exciting. Each year is totally different. The year we're experiencing now, a little rain, it's supposed to clear up, then rain comes. And Rob called me and said, Dad, we have to go out and walk the vineyards on Thursday because I want to check and see if there's any chance of mold growing in the Cabernet because I want them out there for another week.
Mm.
And there aren't. So one thing you can do, turn on wind machines, cause a little wind and it blows the moisture off the grapes. People are worried about rain and the harvest. I welcome it because the rain washes the grapes, knocks the dust off of the berries. So when you do harvest them, provided you don't get hot, humid weather and then mold, when you harvest those grapes, they're cleaner, fresher, and will make a crisper, better wine. So
Mm.
I embrace rain up to a degree.
Right.
1972, we had 13 consecutive days of rain in the first part of October. It was not a good vintage year in Napa.
Although, lastly, let me ask you about this idea of vintage, because we both remember when, speaking of Bordeaux, the Bordelais would say, "Oh, California, there are no vintage years, and everything tastes just the same year after year. It's all very simple, not very layered, not very complex wine." But you have seen a lot of vintages. And it is true that California does have a lot of natural advantages when it comes to
Yeah.
vintage. So how do you think about that? Yeah.
We don't have as severe
Mm,
weather.
yeah.
And in the past, a hot year was a great vintage year in Bordeaux and Burgundy because they would struggle to get enough sugar in the grapes. Now with global warming, that's all changing.
Yeah.
And uh, I don't know if you're conservative or liberal or whatever. All I know is that the leaves accept the photosynthesis. They only understand Fahrenheit and Celsius. And if it's a little warmer, they get mature sooner.
Mm,
And the cooler the climate, the longer the growing season, the more flavor in the skin of the grape, the more flavor in the skin of the grape, particularly for the reds, the more layers of flavor in the wine. And so the cooler growing season that can bring a grape to full maturity, the better the wine.
yeah. I love like our 2023 vintage
Yeah.
here in Napa Valley. So spectacular. Well, Michael, I thank you for talking with me today. I can't wait to taste your 2021. Look, I already have it open. I have my little drop
Amazing.
stop here. Um, I've had your wine before. I know it is delicious, but I haven't had this vintage. Speaking of vintage,
Well,
so
this
uh,
one will invite you to have a second or third glass.
I see. It's very easy to convince me, actually.
Wonderful.
So
It's been a
thank you
pleasure
so
being
much.
with you.
And thank you also again for being a supporter of Come Over October. I wish you a lot of good come overs this month and continuing on.
Well, come on over and let's have lunch or dinner.
I accept. Thank you.
Great.